I had my viewers participate in a really quick experiment. If your entire team could only choose one Titan, who would win? Before I get into it though, let me make some things clear. When it comes to this experiment, we barely scratched the surface. Due to time and people shortages, we were only able to do one match per Titan matchup. We also couldn't do North Star because at a certain point, the amount of tether traps on the ground would cause the game to crash. So yeah, don't take this video super seriously. Starting with one of the worst matchups, it's no surprise that Scorch was dead last. On top of being heavily map dependent, a lot of the Titans in the game have ways to deny his damage and to keep him in check. Ions have Vortex Shield and they can play distance with their Tripwire and Laser Shot. Ronins are fast and they can essentially run circles around the Scorch while they block and wear him down with his shotgun. Monarchs could just play range, and once they got the first upgrade with arc rounds, Scorch's one and only dedicated defensive tool would be useless. While you may think Legion would be cooked in the Scorch matchup, it actually favored the Legion. This is a case where I think the map can somewhat influence the outcome. Another surprising thing that helped the Legions pull one over the Scorchers was the gun shield. Normally, the gun shield isn't seen as a super great thing since it doesn't cover your whole body. But against Scorch and his big thermal projectile, it can be hard to aim for the toes or the top of the head, thus denying a lot of your damage. Seeing as how useful the shield was for Legion, I figured the tone matchup would be equally devastating, if not even more so. So we wanted to give Scorch the advantage of being on Crash Site, a close range map. And in an upset, Scorch was able to come out on top. While it did seem like Tone was initially winning, the Scorchers learned to play around difficult angles and to use the environment around them. Tone also heavily relies on their missiles for their damage, and with so little space to curve or angle the rocket barrage, Scorchers could easily block the damage with their shield. The matchup between Legion and Ion went as well as you can expect. It wasn't too bad though, since in a 1v1, it's pretty easy for a Legion to eventually chip away at an Ion. But in Titan Brawl, getting a clean 1v1 is pretty much impossible, and so the Vortex Shield would still prove to be a very useful tool. The options here for Legions was to basically wait until your gun shield was up to push, to go around and flank, or to wait for your Smart Core since that drains the energy from Ions. For Ronins, the sheer power of Legion's close range capabilities and the knockback from Power Shot were enough to keep them in check for an easy Legion win. Monarchs were also easy prey since the gun shield would help deny the Monarchs their core, and with Legion's offensive capabilities and immense health, it would be near impossible to take down a Legion in a 1v1. Tone would prove to be the worst matchup since the particle wall is impossible to take down with your gun alone, the splash damage and rockets rendered the gun shield useless, and pushing up would often mean sacrificing much of your health for little to no gain. Considering how good Tone was against Legion, it's no surprise that Monarch would prove to be an easy fight as well, since Monarchs are basically just diet Legions. One surprising win though was for sure the Ion fight. And it was actually a stomp. Now admittedly, I think the outcome of the match was largely a part of how open Homestead is. In a 1v1, the fight is more balanced since the Ion just needs to focus on putting up their shield when a barrage of missiles comes. But because of the sheer numbers and the Tone's ability to curve their rockets, it became very awkward to judge when to actually put your shield up. On the other side of the spectrum, Tone versus Ronin was an easy landslide for Ronin. On top of being able to mitigate rocket damage with sword block, Ronin can close the gap easily with movement, they can avoid damage and reset locks with phase dash, and with multiple Ronins, it was very easy to blitz through Tones through sheer DPS and speed. As a jack of all trades, there wasn't any fight that Ion completely dominated in. Even in the fight against Legion, it wasn't that one-sided. Because of the lack of specialization in one area though, Ion fell flat against Tone, which we talked about earlier, Ronin, and Monarch. Ronins were easily able to get behind Ions, and since Ions aren't really capable of doing high damage in close range, Ronins were easily able to surround and just block all incoming damage while their teammates would clean them up. Now while Monarch may have won the fight, I actually think the outcome was simply due to the fact that for one, the Monarchs had one more player, and two, the individual skill level of the players themselves. In the end, I still managed to do a lot of damage even with arc rounds against me, and it was all thanks to one kit, Vortex Amplifier. With a 35% increase in reflected damage, bringing this was basically necessary because since you had to deal with the energy drain from arc rounds anyways, it was important to punish as much as you could with the few stray bullets you did capture. This led to overconfident Core 1 Monarchs to just mag dump your shield, thinking they could actually tank the damage when in reality, they would be regretting once they saw all the damage fly back at them. As expected, Monarch is a beast when it comes to Titan Brawl. Being the only Titan able to heal themselves and upgrade their abilities, it's no surprise that they were among the best performers. However, without her upgrades, she became an easy target against the likes of Tone and Legion, where their offensive and defensive capabilities just deny Monarch's entire existence. The level 1 upgrade arc rounds were basically a must pick since they make two Titans, Ion and Scorch, that much harder to fight against you. The surprising matchup this time, however, was unexpectedly Ronin. When it comes to it, I think Monarch counters Ronin in a straight 1v1. This is only true, however, if the Monarch can maintain their distance, and so we would have our one and only tie in Angel City. As you can see in the footage, technically the Monarchs won, but that's only because the Ronin's execution didn't finish in time. And finally, we have the best performing Titan, Ronin. As someone who's main Ronin for basically their entire Titanfall 2 game time, I wasn't actually that surprised. Ronin has great movement, great damage mitigation, high damage, and one of the best cores in the game for dealing raw damage. And yeah, that's about it. I'm a little sad that we weren't able to test out North Star or play longer, but it is what it is. If you want to take part in experiments like this, make sure you join the Discord down below in the description. And if you want to support me even further, grab a channel membership using the join button that's next to the subscribe button. That's going to be all for me though, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.